Church. It's great to be with you again. Hey, this morning I want to talk to you about perspective. You've probably been finding all this week how important it is to listen. The Bible is a book of perspectives, and yet the Bible includes 66 different books, each of them written from many different authors, many different viewpoints, and God speaking through the voices and experiences of others. That's why I'm always sort of astonished to find voices like the voice of Jeremiah. He's known to be the weeping prophet because he had difficulty with the message. There was judgment coming, it would be something difficult for them to bear. But Jeremiah hung around. He didn't leave the people of God after he pronounced that message. In fact, he stayed with them, he lived through it, and he even felt the devastation that came. Jeremiah, the weeping prophet. He wrote a different book, the book of Lamentations. And in those 5 chapters, Jeremiah shares with all of us just exactly what it was like to live in that time and to behold the difficulty of God's chastisement and judgment. It was not for the faint of heart. In fact, in chapter 4, Jeremiah makes a statement that is a little shocking. He says, man, happier were the victims of the sword than the victims of hunger. He talks about how children went without food, how they begged and there was nothing. Jeremiah makes it known for all time that God's people suffered in that period. Kind of makes me wonder, why would God include those statements? Why would he want Jeremiah's complaint to be part of the canon of Scripture? After all, there were many other apostles who wrote books that never made it into the Bible. Their perspectives and their prayers and even their poetry never made it into the pages of Scripture. But here, God has taken time to record some of the most difficult things. Reminds me that God does care. God cares enough to listen. He takes the time to hear what we have to say, and there's a reason for it. Also contained in Jeremiah is one of the most beautiful statements about God's character in the midst of suffering and difficulty and hardship. The scriptures say in Lamentations chapter 3, as I remember my affliction, I remember my wanderings, I remember the wormwood and the gall. My soul continually remembers it, and it is bowed down within me. But, verse 21, this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. He said, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. That is an amazing perspective. And it's surprising. But it is also the experience of many, many other believers, Old Testament saints, and of course, apostles and prophets. God came through in so many ways. Job was another individual who wrote all about what it was like to suffer, even when God allowed it. You could say he was oppressed. He was definitely inconvenienced. He lost much of his family. His wife mocked him. And of course, he suffered with sickness himself. And yet, in the midst of Job's experience, some very profound perspectives come to light. Job said, I know that my Redeemer lives. I know that he's alive right now, even though I feel like I'm on the brink of death. Job also said, though he slay me, yet I will trust him. That is exactly the kind of thing that Jeremiah is bringing out here in Lamentations. These perspectives are powerful tools in times of struggle and adversity. And we realize that God cares enough to listen to us, he knows that something is being shaped in us that oftentimes we're not aware of. At the beginning of the book of Job, just like at the beginning of the book of Lamentations, neither Job nor Jeremiah really knew what was going to come out of them until they found themselves in the moment reflecting on the goodness of God in the midst of hardship and even tragedy. God also knows exactly how much it hurts. He feels how much it hurts. We're told in Hebrews chapter 2 that Jesus, when he was sent to experience something similar. Verse 16 says, "We know also that the Son of God did not come to help angels, but he came to help the descendants of Abraham." That's us. "Therefore, it was necessary for him to be made in every respect just like us, his brothers and sisters, so that he could be our merciful and faithful high priest before God, so he could offer a sacrifice that would take away the sins of the people. And since he himself has gone through suffering and testing, he is able to help us when we ourselves are being tested." Jesus, too, had to learn from his experiences in order to qualify to be the person who could save us. God just didn't simply look down on our situation and send a remedy, but he dipped himself in our own experiences through our own weakness, our own struggles, and rose triumphant to make a way where there was actually no way. And that's how I know that perspective under pressure can be a powerful tool that can produce unobtainable qualities in us, unlike the preferred methods that we choose. And the thing is, right now with COVID-19, this is a learning opportunity for us. It really is. It's a costly one too. So that's why I want to encourage you this morning. Let's learn whatever perspectives and lessons we can glean out of this, because we'll be paying for the lesson, as you know, regardless. The other thing I want you to know is that God cares. He cares enough to show us that perspective is a process. Perspective is a process. We don't always like that word process. What's involved in the process? And usually when somebody uses that word process, they mean there are things that are going to happen that you don't control and that you don't set into motion. Well, it's interesting that Jeremiah says in verse 26 of chapter 3, Lamentations, "It is good that one should wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." See, this is also a time for us to be still and know that he is God. It's a time that requires us to be still and know who is God in this situation, and that he is working even when we can't. You see, God knows exactly what it'll take to shape us. He knows exactly what is needed. And more than anything, I believe he wants to lead us through this time of adversity with the power of his presence and a fresh perspective.